At least the space allows people to be active contributors. So just a few points from Reshop's study. I talked a little bit about the barriers, and I suppose I hit 3 or 4 points. I did touch on them up front. Access to affordable support. And by support I mean configuration, somebody explains to you how something works, why you might choose it, solving solving network problems or setup or configuration problems. I don't mean actually write software. I mentioned the budget point up front. I think that is significant. If we're going to make more use of IT in schools and in education and use the platforms, it's something that we're going to have to solve. I know I've seen some studies from the NCTE in Ireland on suggestions on how they might solve that. And quite significant approach that they've been promoting. I'm not sure how far they've gotten in implementation. And there's less support in the business space. Now, Linux has started to find quite a lot of support with the traditional Unix vendors. So people who always did HPUX or all the older DEC in Ireland, in the public sector in Ireland, the DEC, BMS, very popular platform. They tended to move into the Unix support and into Linux support space. But a lot of the other applications don't have a lot of local support and local expertise. I guess another barrier is there's just too much software out there. Even any of the sites, I was looking at education sites in the last week or two, trying to do a bit of research and just see what's going on in different places. There's an awful lot of stuff out there, and that's a barrier. It's quite similar to, if you buy PC Live magazine and you get a CD on it and there's a lot of software. It's not a whole lot different to that. It's quite an investment that you make in downloading a piece of software and looking at it and trying to figure out, does it satisfy your need? So that's a problem, I guess, in both spaces. The benefit in the open source space is if you like it, you keep it. Whereas in the proprietary space, you get so far with something that it times out, or it doesn't allow you to save, or it allows you to save for 30 days and you start to do something useful, then you've got to go buy the package. Another very significant barrier, I think, is the vendor push. And this is something I've kind of been involved in myself in trying to develop a business model around supporting open source software. And there isn't a lot of vendor push because it's quite difficult to get the business model right. We've ended up really being a professional services company. So there aren't many companies out there pushing open source. Not the same way if you were an Oracle partner. You can afford to push Oracle because when you sell the solution, you've got a big license revenue, and that pays. So there's a product space there. Open source doesn't have the product component; it only has the professional services, application development component. So quite a significant barrier. There are models evolving that will maybe move us past that, but they're slow to evolve. Another barrier we ran into with our Open Office product was that parents expected children to use Microsoft Office. And it was plain and simple as that. It wasn't about learning to drive cars, it was back forwards of what they need to drive, because that's what's out there in the marketplace. And a number of teachers that were trying to push Open Office, they had to back off the ECDL program simply because of that. A few projects, something that we've played with a little bit, Ubuntu, I haven't seen it implemented. We have implemented the Linux terminal server for thin clients, which I think is, whether it's a Linux approach or a Windows approach or a Citrix approach. I'm starting to get feedback here now. I think they're the Linux terminal server approach is probably ultimately what's most useful, most interesting for education. Move away from having these boxes with fans and all that stuff lying around the place, and CD drives that break and all that sort of crap. Ubuntu are evolving, I suppose, a platform with applications configured for this space. They have services there that you can sit down and try. I think a number of schools around. If you look at some of the references, show you a number of schools that have actually done this. I like their goals because it reminds us of the different sort of breadth of schools. You've got the young children, your teachers' goals, your students' goals, your schools themselves, from curriculum to administrative tools. So every one you are trying to address a very ambitious project. I think probably the poster child of open source projects around Ireland is probably Moodle. Any IT people that I know knocking around education can be very aware of Moodle and are moving along. Some of them probably very advanced in their use of it already. It'd be wrong to talk about open source projects in schools without talking about Open Office, because I think Open Office is a very significant project. It's a straight one-on-one competition for Microsoft Office, which is a dominant, has a strong monopoly pretty much throughout the world. But Open Office is starting to break through there, and every time we look up, it's free. I actually got an email this week. I think there's probably a lot of Irish people on the call here today. I got an email this week for a new version of the Irish language version of Open Office. I said here 80 languages. I don't know how many languages there are now. We wrote this slide about 2 years ago, and there are hundreds of millions of downloads of the project. Not a lot of people know about it. If you don't know about it, it's certainly worth looking at. So just moving along to maybe what you could do. So what does this mean? For people out there who haven't thought about open source, who don't really know how to get started. I know the NCTE in Ireland have been looking at, it would be a teacher support organisation, promoting best of breed for at least some categories. So, and I think the teacher organisations and the education sector should push their support organisations to sort of coordinate support, at least for core, as I say, best of breed. Most of the application I'm talking about is supported on Windows and Mac. And it's important to remember that you don't have to get into Linux being open source. So Open Office on Windows, Moodle's got nothing to do with it. We run on Windows, it runs on Linux. Worth keeping that in mind. So you can just try one application. Yeah, this actually works. I'll try another if I have another need. License cost means educate and collaborate. This is the point I'm making earlier about barriers. There aren't actually barriers. So teaching or education organisations that across school can actually collaborate in this space, or maybe they can't in other spaces because of the cost and who's going to pay, and it's difficult to go cross organisational budgets. I've listed a few case studies here, so I suppose this will be up on the site there. The best site I've found for case studies is the openschools.org.uk. They're an Open Forum Europe supported organisation. I've just mentioned a few there. One that I hadn't heard of down in Tralee, in small school in Tralee. Quite a significant piece of work that they've done there. Course management, social networking, cost-effective curriculum, whole school curriculum, painting for infants. They have quite a few case studies written up there, and in some of the other sites that I mentioned here in resources. So I'll give you a few sites that I found useful. I was a bit disappointed actually with the K-12 open source project in the US, probably less significant than I expected it to be. But some of the other ones, also open source alternatives, very good site. And the magazines, just over in Eastern yesterday looking at the Ubuntu magazine. It's an excellent monthly magazine, Linux format. Get these magazines, read, there are tutorials in them, there are insights into new applications, into major upgrades, and probably the best resource I find out there. And just to finish up then, who are we? Open Forum Europe. And we had an organisation called Open Ireland, but we've been a little defunct in the last probably 2 years. We were a national partner to Open Forum Europe, a not-for-profit organisation that really advocates open source and open standards. Doing a lot of work in Brussels in particular,